What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Monday Memo. Unfortunately, I have to be in my car because I couldn't find another good place to film in the house. Everyone's home. It's a little crazy right now, but as you guys probably know, I just got back from Cuba late Saturday night. I took yesterday to relax, spend it with my parents, my dad on Father's Day, but this Monday Memo is going to be all about what we did in Cuba, regarding Inspire Cuba, and just what a trip it was, man. It was amazing. We went to advance the mission of Inspire Cuba and to also gauge the Cuban reaction directly from El Malecón de La Habana of Trump's announcements on the policy reversal or change. And so it was incredible. So landing in Havana is always a surreal experience. A lot of American flights coming in now, so it was definitely bustling there. The first meeting we went to right away, we got to meet with Mario Gonzalez Novo. I don't know if I've mentioned him before in a previous video, but he was the former director of international relations for ACETAF, la Asociación de Cubanos Técnicos Agrícolas y Forestales in Cuba. It's a Cuban NGO that basically works with the private agricultural cooperatives and does like research on their processes and things like that. But anyways, he was the international director, and that organization was supposed to be the organization that would receive our donations for the project Marabouta Charcoal. Donations consisting of 6 chainsaws, industrial, like steel, which is an American company. It's very good stuff. Hard hats, gloves, protective eyewear, things like that. Gas canisters, stuff that would really improve their processes, helping them harvest the marabu, convert it to charcoal for export. But that's where it gets tricky, is that import export. As soon as you start talking about stuff like that, importing and exporting goods from Cuba, it does get into the weeds. You need permissions, you need transport, and that makes it very difficult. It's very difficult to secure those permits. And so with the new company that Mario is working for, he said that they were very interested in the donation, unlike Acetaf apparently, and we basically said, in a month, get back to us in a month, see what you can do, see if you can get the permits, because apparently they were very interested, but he didn't want to give them the okay until talking to us. So now that he talked to us, he basically has a month to see how he can advance those donations. And Mario's a great guy. I love meeting with him. He's a very educated guy, and he actually commented on the policy shift. Now that was on Thursday, so before the policy shift actually happened, but he gave us some good insight. He said that even Cubans, because as you might know, the biggest criticism of the policy of engagement, of opening up, is just the fact that people are afraid it won't trickle down even to the ordinary Cuban people, even though it's measurable and tangible. How a Cuban Airbnb owner can earn up to 800% more income annually than just an ordinary Cuban who's not an Airbnb owner. And so he said that for Cubans who aren't in the tourism sector, it could at least open their eyes and show them that the that if their lives are not improving, if their surroundings, things around them are not improving, it's not as a result of sanctions put on them by the United States, which like including the embargo and things like that. That's just a mouthpiece for the government. Now, I always talk about that, change with Cuba is not going to come overnight. It's going to be a process of change, and that process starts with engagement. And so, one thing that engagement does is that it hacks the Cuban psyche. The Cuban psyche is very set in its ways, proud, and things like that. And if we can get them to understand that, hey, the result, the poor surroundings, the reason why your life isn't changing isn't a result of any sanctions. It's a result of poor administration. At least opening up to Cuba helps them get this understanding. And Mario was able to eloquate that to us, and that was awesome. And so Thursday, I was all just Thursday. But let's talk more. Let's talk more. On Friday, we went to La Lonja del Comercio, or the former Lonja del Comercio, which is just I think it used to be the former stock exchange of Cuba back when it was capitalist. Not positive on that, but it is where a bunch of news agencies are housed, like CNN and the Associated Press. And while they were very busy trying to gauge the Cuban reaction, because that was on Friday of Trump's announcements, we did get to speak with the Associated Press and got an interview with them for Saturday, though. So that was Friday. What else? We met with the priest from La Iglesia Evangélica de Cuba, or the Evangelical Church of Cuba, and this was a great experience. The pastor was so knowledgeable, and apparently he has connections to a church in Texas who already has authority or the necessary permissions to do construction work in Cuba, specifically in eastern Cuba, which is where our, and when I say our, Inspired Cuba's Hurricane Matthew relief project took place. A lot of homes were destroyed in that area near my sea, and this church in Texas already has the permissions to do construction work, building houses for people who lost their homes in the hurricane and other natural disasters, and building roofs and things like that. And it was just so great to hear, because since they have these authorizations, they've already brought on their person things like chainsaws, which is what our main thing we want to import. And I'm so much happier because the priest said that he would put us in contact with this church, and I think that our organization is just so much happier that this is going to be the channels through which the project is going to move, because the priest assured us that things get lost in the shuffle sometimes. Cuba is very bureaucratic. The fact that you can, you know, see the home that you would build for a family in need is incredible. And so that's why we're shifting gears. It's much easier to import things, bring things into Cuba if they're physically on your person rather than having to export them to the island. So we were extremely excited that we can now move the project forward in this channel, and be able to give the proof of, hey, look, you know, I came to Cuba, I handed this chainsaw to this church, I worked with the church, I built homes for people in Cuba. And you know, the church, I just shared an article about this today, the church can reach places where the state can't. These people are so poor, so disconnected and isolated over there in eastern Cuba, and to build these homes for them would really just, it would be an incredible thing. And so we're trying to shift our project of Marabu to charcoal through those channels. But that was Friday. That basically summed up Friday. We spent some time on the Malecón trying to gauge the Cuban reaction to Trump's announcements. And what we learned was basically that, so the Cubans didn't really have a lot of information. I guess it takes them a little more time over there to get the news and digest it. But what they did know, and so I mean, some Cubans were, they were like, oh yeah, you know, now Americans are only going to be able to stay at private residence and eat at private restaurants, so that's going to be, you know, that's not bad at all, that's pretty good. But then some were like, oh, it's going to be a total shutdown. So, you know, Cubans tend to exaggerate things. Even people of Cuban descent like myself tend to exaggerate. But overall, I would say that the reaction was overwhelmingly negative, despite how much information they had. Any type of rollback to their policy, to the current policy that's in place, was going to be negative. Because, for example, if you take away people to people travel, which is the exemption under which many Americans traveled, and you know, got around the tourism ban loophole, that's really the way in which people are coming, and then they're staying at these Airbnbs, eating at these paladares, these private restaurants, engaging with the Cubans. They're not only helping the Cubans benefit financially, but also just opening their eyes to like this whole new world. And so I feel like the policy shifts, you know, they're kind of contradictory in that sense, because you have these approved tourist groups coming, or these approved groups for education purposes or things like that, and that really takes away that one-on-one element where you come people to people, and then, you know, you do your own thing and you stay at these private residences, eat at private restaurants. And I think that the Cubans were kind of feeling that pain. So that was Friday night. What did we do on Saturday? Saturday was an extremely eventful day, and guys, I'm gonna post pictures, videos, and a ton of content from my whole trip in Cuba. I was like non-stop documenting pictures, videos, interviews, whether I was on the receiving end or the giving end of the interviews. It was so exciting, so immersive, and exhausting. but I'm glad I did it. So Saturday we met with the artist Caco, who his work is a project called Lugares Comunes, or Common Places, where he basically takes, you know, pictures of events or certain scenes in Cuba, and he comes to the States, and then he takes pictures of their American counterparts, whether it's someone contemplating something on a subway in New York, and then versus another person also looking pensive on a subway in somewhere in Cuba. That's just a small example, but the works are very powerful. We're going to try to bring him to the States for an event, an exhibition of his work, and I'll have more details on that farther down the line. That's still way a ways, but the interesting thing about that was that we ate at this great little cafe called Cafe Arcangel. It looked like one of these hipster cafes that you'd see in downtown Brooklyn or something like that, but and it was in Havana, which is the craziest part. But the Associated Press actually interviewed us there, our interactions with Kako, and they got some feedback from myself and John Corres, another member of Inspire Cuba, and as well as our organization stance on the policy shifts, and also on our projects and our works, which was super exciting. I will put that out as soon as I get it from them, as well as more pictures and videos. What else? We met with Javier Ortiz, was part of the media over there, had a very insightful conversation with him. We also met with Darcy, these two young women, Darcy and Viviana, reporters for On Cuba and El Toque. So a lot of good stuff, flowing. Overall, I would say it was a very great, very successful trip. I got to learn so much. I have pages and pages of notes. We took some gifts over there. I'll post about that. They loved it. This video is getting way too long, but overall, guys, I'm excited for the future. As I always say, pa arriba y pa'lante.